The spread of coronavirus is accelerating.
We're seeing, false and misleading information that's kind of strange.
And unprecedented quarantine. Wuhan and central China and nearby cities in lockdown.
Hello, I'm Richard Gisbert, and you're at The Listening Post. Here are some of the media stories we're covering this week. We're pointing our lens at China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, starting with the coronavirus and Beijing's efforts to keep the outbreak and the coverage contained. The talking heads who gave up their anchor chairs to serenade Chinese audiences about the virus, plus contraband books, a forced confession, and a life in exile. The bookseller who fled Hong Kong for Taipei. And the death of Kobe Bryant, the tweet the Washington Post found institutionally damaging. About a week and a half ago, on January 23rd, the Chinese authorities shut down the city of Wuhan. Population, 11 million. And ground zero for the outbreak of the coronavirus. In short order, 17 more cities were quarantined. The total number of people affected, nearly 60 million. The orders issued by Beijing were significant, but late in coming, because the first official case of this virus was confirmed almost 2 months ago, on the 8th of December, 2019. It took that long before China's state-controlled news media stopped downplaying the seriousness of the outbreak and started providing the kind of information that can save lives. By that stage, however, millions of Chinese citizens had passed through the affected region, unaware of the risks involved. The death toll is now in the hundreds, the number infected in the thousands, and the coronavirus, like the coverage of this story, has gone global. Our starting point this week is the city of Wuhan. No one can control the timing of a viral outbreak, a potential pandemic. But in a country like China, they can control, or at least try to control, what people know about it. On January 18th, the city of Wuhan, China's 7th largest, hosted a potluck dinner attended by about 40,000 families. The participants would not have known that 2 weeks earlier in Hong Kong, the media were already comparing this virus to the SARS outbreak of 2003, warning it could be moving from human to human. There was none of that in the local media coverage of the giant dinner in Wuhan, not even a mention that we could find of the coronavirus, the fact that all those families may have been at risk. And like local news outlets, the national media, most of which are controlled by Beijing, were focusing on other stories.
We had stories about Xi Jinping going to Myanmar, Xi Jinping going to Yunnan and talking about how strong the Chinese military is, and kind of buried a little bit and tucked underneath is the story about the coronavirus outbreak that is at the forefront of everyone's attention.
This started to become a big story, not because of what we heard inside China, but because of what we started to hear from sources outside of China. We started to do some reporting going out to Beijing railway station to try to see what the feeling was.
People here are looking to the government to do more.
We spoke to 12 people on that day. 7 out of those people had no idea what we were talking about. And the people who did know about it said to us, I think the government has it in hand. I think they know what they're doing.
The state is monitoring and censoring what is said about the outbreak on both mainstream and social media. On January 1st, police in Wuhan arrested 8 people for, quote, spreading rumors online, sending a clear message in the process.
警方提示，网络不是法外之地，在网上发布信息言论应遵守法律法规。
It turned out that all 8 were medical professionals. They were predicting a SARS-type outbreak, and they weren't wrong. A few weeks later, a Hong Kong-based journalist, Lu Rose Lucho, who made her name covering the SARS story, wrote a piece for the Chinese internet giant Tencent. She focused on the need for transparency at the time of an outbreak, the obligation to keep citizens informed. Her story was online for 10 hours, and then just disappeared.
My experience is a vivid example of the censorship in China. I was invited by Tencent to write an article. After they deleted the article, I tried to contact them and to figure out what's happened, and they have no idea. There's no black and white written down rules for what kind of information should be allowed or not be allowed.
The initial shortage of official information spawned a contagion of conspiracy theories and rumors on everything from causes to cures, most of which were spread over WeChat, a multi-purpose app with more than 1 billion users. They included allegations that the virus was created in a biological weapons lab, that Bill Gates was somehow involved, that it can be cured by drinking bleach.
Misleading messages about how you can prevent being infected by the coronavirus by, say, chewing on raw garlic or taking some kind of saline solution. Censors trying to strike a delicate balance between getting rid of this kind of misinformation, but at the same time allowing some kind of public discourse to continue.
Social media, messages, rumors saying, their local medical system were overwhelmed, right? Hospitals run out of supplies, but the city and the province, they would say, okay, we're in good shape, we are under control. It is a very delicate balance to strike for any government. On the one hand, you don't want to frighten citizens, right? On the other hand, you never know if they tell them the truth, what would happen.
By January 20th, the number of confirmed cases had climbed to 200 plus. Airports in several countries were screening passengers coming out of China, and President Xi Jinping finally broke his silence. The state-run media got the message and then confirmed the increasingly obvious: the coronavirus was moving from human to human. And like an overloaded dam that finally breaks, Baidu, the Chinese Google, exploded with the kind of information that Beijing had tried to contain.
Once Xi Jinping gave that statement, it's as if the whole country started to mobilize. Things started to happen. People started to spread information about what to do to keep safe. There was more information about where this virus came from. Within 1 week, the government went from saying this is preventable and controllable, don't panic, to the city of Wuhan being in lockdown. And I think that if the information had been more forthcoming at the beginning, if there had been more public awareness a few days earlier, what could have been done at that stage to prevent this from spreading further?
It is not just a media crisis, it's a biopolitical crisis, right? So we have the national authorities want to make sure, number one, their populations stay healthy. And then another concern, I think, is international, right? And we don't want to be exporting viruses, right? And we want to be viewed as a responsible international players. But I do expect there will be that huge wave of reflection, criticism, and then looking for accountability in the media.
In 2003, Beijing suppressed coverage of the SARS outbreak for even longer than it did this time, nearly 6 months. Back then, the Chinese media played a large part in pressuring the government to come clean. But it was a different time. China, still new to capitalism, was experimenting with other reforms, gradually giving journalists more freedom from censorship. But those days are gone. The regional newspapers that provided some of the best SARS-related journalism have since had their wings clipped, along with most Chinese news outlets. And while Beijing has spent less time in denial mode than it did in 2003, while it's been quicker to call this story what it is, a potential pandemic, it wasn't the journalism, at least not in China, that got it there.
We see kind of two large trends that have occurred since 2003 in terms of information. People have a lot more access to information than back in 2003, but at the same time, the state has become much more restrictive and repressive. It's really cracked down on civil society groups, on media, on activists, on intellectuals. And for that reason alone, I think we're going to see much less questioning from these groups this time around, just because they've been under so much pressure from the state.
No one, not even China, can control the timing of a viral outbreak. And nothing exposes the weaknesses of such a media system like a story that comes out of the blue. It happened in 2003, and history has repeated itself. If nothing changes, we'll probably see the denials, the delays, the withholding of information, and censorship all repeated with the next coronavirus, when China once again will be counting the cost of control in lives lost. We're discussing other media stories that are on our radar this week with one of our producers, Meenakshi Ravi. Meena, a Washington Post reporter, Felicia Sonmez, was suspended this past week after sending out a tweet following the news of the death of Kobe Bryant, the American basketball star. What was problematic about her tweet?
Well, Richard, the death of Kobe Bryant in that shock helicopter crash prompted a huge outpouring of public grief. There were all kinds of tributes online. Now, Sonmez, who's a national political reporter for the Washington Post, tweeted a link to an article from the news website The Daily Beast. The article was from 2016, and it was about rape allegations made against Bryant back in 2003. Now, those allegations are detailed and disturbing. And Sonmez got some serious Twitter blowback, including, she says, death threats. She stuck by her decision, though. This is what she said. She said, any public figure is worth remembering in their totality, even if that public figure is beloved and that totality unsettling. Then she got an email from the executive editor of the Washington Post, Marty Baron.
Who's a very familiar name, has a serious journalistic reputation, and was featured in that film Spotlight in 2016, which was about his time at the Boston Globe.
That Marty Baron, correct. Now, he wrote to her saying that she had shown a real lack of judgment and was hurting this institution, the Washington Post, by doing this. Sonmez was then put on paid leave while the paper worked out if she had violated the company's social media policies, which it turned out she hadn't.
And that was enough for the Post to back down?
That and the support she got from her colleagues. Now, the paper's media columnist, Eric Wemple, wrote a piece that was published in the paper in which he said the suspension was misguided. Hundreds of Post employees signed a letter to management saying the Post's social media guidelines were vague and inconsistently enforced, and that management should support a reporter who wanted to tell the public the whole truth as we know it.
Okay, thanks, Meena. When legislators in Hong Kong tried to pass a new extradition law last year, the one that triggered all those protests, a bookseller there, Lam Wing Ki, finally packed up and left the city. For more than 20 years, Lam had owned Causeway Bay Books, a store that specialized in books critical of the Communist Party in Beijing and exposed the private lives of the ruling elite there. Lam also perfected the art of smuggling those books onto the mainland. His work turned him into a target. In 2015, Lam, along with 4 colleagues, just disappeared. Months later, they resurfaced on state-run television in China, confessing to the crime of smuggling contraband. The Listening Post's Johanna Hoos traveled to Lam's new home in Taiwan to speak to him about his time in a Chinese prison, solitary confinement, the bizarre circumstances of his release, and his plan to finish what he started, running a bookstore with a mission.
法律啊，我也不是杀人放火，我只是最多是把一些书邮过去中国大陆而已，没什么大不了。其实从我来讲。
Deepening mystery in Hong Kong sounds like the plot of a political thriller, but it's all too real.
这是2015年的10月24号嘛，然后我过了中国大陆就给关了起来。
5 Hong Kong booksellers have disappeared since October.
我们完全是没有想到会这个事情会发生在我们身上。 当然是很惊讶了，因为不可能是5个人一起先后是失踪的，这个事情是在我的理解以外的事情。
For the missing, many just want them home.
当然我知道他们是怎么去看我们，就是我们是违反他的一个国家安全，这个是很严重，观念不一样。
Talk to us about Causeway Bay Books. What was the mission of your bookstore, and were you specifically looking to sell books that China's Communist Party objected to?
书嘛，这些书有没有卖到中国大陆呢？
其实我们刚开始不一定有什么很大的一个理念，只是喜欢看书。其实对我们影响最大是89年那个事件，我们。 如果跟朋友谈的话，可能谈不出什么东西，只可以通过书本里面去了解。所以其实后来我们会有一些书，尤其是中国大陆了解，希望通过一些比较好的一些探讨性的书，有去过中国大陆，让更多中国大陆的人了解他自己国家发生什么事情。 2014年我们让给桂门海以后，就是他们也会出很多一些是看市场的书，等于是桂门海出书那个重点跟我们不一样，它是以生意为主的，很简单一个要赚钱，所以你看他的书很多那个所谓的关于习近平的一些评论。 中国大陆一些研究的，中国大陆一些批评的，都是没有根据的，全部都是看市场来出的。
Is it fair to say that it wasn't just the types of books that you were selling, but more the fact that you perfected the art of smuggling these books into mainland China that made you a target in the eyes of China's Communist Party?
其实多就有经验啊，这个经验是很多人不知道，也很难是。比方我举一个很简单的例子你去那个广州的、广东的就比较容易记。你去北京、天津、上海、吉林、西安、武汉都很难记的。广东省因为那个准确号量大，所以你每一次记几包书过去的话，因为太小，他们就不怎么看。也可以说北方的，他们比较保守，就是很担心有一些不一样的思想，一些书本进去中国大陆。比方是中国大陆我在广州有人帮我在大陆转寄的话，我先寄去广州。 有一些朋友就会帮忙，就先寄给他，让他去再转过去。刚才我说的北方一些地方就比较容易寄，其他我当然是不能说的太多了，因为我可能将来也寄。
Now, during your time in prison, you and also your colleagues were asked to do a confession on Chinese state TV.
因为我已经是触犯了中国法律的条文，我很后悔。希望这些事件以后，中国政府对我是比较宽一些，处理重庆。
How was this experience? What did they ask of you? What did they ask you to say? And was there any room for you to push back?
那个就是他给你一些安排吧。比方要拍的时候，等于是审问我的人是这个导演吧。我后来才知道说没有那个那个出版那个书号嘛。 就是不允许在没有这个允许在国内那个发行零售嘛，所以就是现在是违法。没有坚持下来了，我当时也想过一些所谓自杀嘛，我只是尽量按他的意思来做。他有关我一生一世的话，我也恐慌啊，我也怕死啊，我没有什么胆量啊。往往就是通过一些视频，要我们拍一个电视认罪，播出来给其他人看见。其实他拍出来是给 不是给外面的人看，是给中国大陆里面的人看。这个是他等于是一个宣传，因为他也发现外面很多人不相信他拍那个电视影这样。 他要我有一个承诺要回去，但是他要我做什么事情？他要把我香港一些邮寄的订单，那个订户的资料带回去给中国大陆，让他做一个很可能有一些订户会给他讲话。回来香港以后是不能公开这个事情，不能跟那个传媒说话，不能跟家里谈。 我的手机要打开，他有一个追踪的，我去什么地方要配合他，他也知道我去哪里，这个考量，还有这个事情你不公开的话，影响更大，因为他很可能会再派人过来香港把人绑走，这个是对于香港危害性很大，所以我比较起来的话，还是决定要把这个事情公开。 因为很多人会担心他自己安全，因为5个人可以是中国大陆在弄过去中国大陆里面的无声无息的这个非常恐怖的事件。一些出版商就离开香港，跑过来台湾这块自由的地方来出。 可能我在香港那个生活状态也是一个不太平静的，因为我会出去的时候也处于一个很紧张的情况，我会担心有没有人跟踪我，等于是在香港处于一个是不稳定的状态。过来台湾的话，我比较放心。我现在比较忙的要准备要将来开书店而已，其他我不多想。 台湾这块比较安定的一个地方，希望可以留下来，还是很可能会预备会重开书店。
And finally, back to where we began, with the coronavirus and the state-controlled media in China. Having not exactly bathed themselves in glory at the outset of this story, you might think that this would be a good time for certain Chinese media outlets to lie low and direct attention elsewhere. The Shanghai Media Group figured that no, it was in fact the opportune moment to take 35 of their presenters, trade their suits in for sweaters that say, "Stay together, fight the virus," and perform a song and dance routine, a tribute to the doctors and nurses out there trying to save lives. Maybe they thought that with nearly 50 million people under lockdown, there would be a captive audience out there. Our prescription for the Shanghai Media Group, less entertainment, please. Your viewers would much rather OD on real news. We'll see you next time here at The Listening Post.
像曾经的灾难突然降临，而今又一次无畏去重逢。是你，是我，守望相助，正日夜兼程，民族的膝盖捧出。 情而终止长城，凝聚精神永。